Welcome back to the Noir Archive. Today, we open a secret archive from the ruins of World War II. This is the dark history of the Amber Room, 6 tons of gold and jewel-encrusted walls that disappeared into the fog of war. It is a tale of obsession, looted art, and a string of mysterious deaths that suggests some secrets were never meant to be found. In the shadows of history, there are secrets protected not only by guns and bullets, but also by blood and ancestral curses. Imagine a space so brilliant it could dazzle the eyes. More than 6 tons of million-year-old fossilized amber, hand-carved, gilded in pure gold, and inlaid with the finest jewels of the Russian Empire. It was called the Amber Room, the eighth wonder of the world. A priceless treasure, valued at over $500 million in the modern world, but its true value lies in the souls that fell to possess it. In 1941, Hitler's war machine dismantled this wonder from the Russian palace, packed it into 27 heavy wooden crates, and brought it to the Königsberg fortress. But when the Red Army's guns roared in 1945, this treasure suddenly vanished like a ghost into the mists of history. A train lost in the night? Or an underground bunker buried forever under the ruins of the Third Reich? Since then, a terrifying shadow has begun to shroud those who try to touch the truth. People call it the Amber Curse. Alfred Rode, the room's final guardian, died mysteriously of a strange illness just before being interrogated by Soviet secret agents. His medical records vanished. Decades later, George Stein, the world's most famous treasure hunter who claimed to be very close to the hiding place, was found deep in the Bavarian forest with his chest sliced open by a scalpel. No culprits. No traces. Only the chilling silence of fossilized resin. This is not just a simple art theft. This is a journey into the heart of obsession, greed, and unexplained deaths. Welcome to the Noir Archive. Today, we reopen the secret files on the greatest theft in human history, the disappearance of the Amber Room. Our story doesn't begin in an underground bunker, but in the brilliant light of the 18th century. In 1716, King Frederick William I of Prussia gave an unprecedented gift to Tsar Peter the Great of Russia. They were exquisite amber panels, a confirmation of the military alliance and friendship between the two empires. But for the Russians, it was not just a gift, it was the nucleus of a vanity dream. Under Empress Elizabeth and later Catherine the Great, the room was expanded and installed at the Catherine Palace in Tsarskoye Selo. Imagine a space of more than 55 square meters, where every wall was covered with more than 6 tons of natural amber. Amber is no ordinary gemstone, it is million-year-old fossilized resin. Under the light of thousands of candles, those walls did not reflect light like mirrors, but instead swallowed the light, radiating a golden, warm, yet hauntingly magical aura. It was said that standing in the room gave the feeling that light was being held captive within million-year-old resin blocks. It was not just art, it was a symbol of the absolute power of the Tsars. Intricate carvings, large alternating mirrors, and layers of pure gold leaf turned this place into the eighth wonder. For 2 centuries, it was Russia's pride, a treasure the world believed would last forever. In the summer of 1941, the skies over Tsarskoye Selo were no longer peaceful. Operation Barbarossa erupted. The Nazi war machine swept across the Soviet border with destructive speed. As German troops neared Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, art curators at the Catherine Palace fell into a state of extreme panic. They tried to dismantle the Amber Room to move it deep into the interior. But time was a luxury they did not have. Over centuries, the amber layers had become brittle and fragile, touching them in dry conditions caused precious pieces to crack and fall. In a desperate and tragic effort, the palace managers made a fatal mistake, they tried to hide the room. Instead of taking it away, they covered the magnificent amber walls with cheap wallpaper, hoping the crude German soldiers would only think it was an ordinary room. It was a naive gamble. They forgot that accompanying the armored divisions were not just soldiers, but intellectual treasure hunters with sharp eyes. When the Germans occupied the palace in October 1941, the room could not escape its fate. The first to enter were not ordinary privates, but members of the Ahnenerbe organization, an occult and heritage research branch of the SS led by Heinrich Himmler. Their mission? To recover everything they considered lost German heritage. Here, a key figure appeared, Dr. Alfred Rode. Rode was not a soldier with a gun, he was an amber expert, a scholar who spent his life studying the Baltic gold. To Rode, the seizure of the amber room was not a theft, it was a repatriation. He believed that because the room was designed by Prussian artisans, it rightfully belonged to Germany. Beneath the exterior of a calm scholar lay a morbid obsession. Rode looked at the amber walls with the eyes of a possessor. He directly supervised the recovery process, considering it the greatest achievement of his career. Alfred Rode was the chief architect of the treasure's disappearance, an intellectual villain who used knowledge to legitimize a crime. Orders from Berlin were clear, the room must be taken to Germany immediately. For 36 consecutive hours, an army of German engineers and art experts carried out the dismantling. The German meticulousness at this moment was terrifying. They did not smash, they used scalpels and sophisticated tools to separate each piece of amber from the wooden frame. 6 tons of treasure were broken down and carefully packed into 27 large crates. Each crate was sealed, numbered, and protected as if it contained the fate of the entire empire. When the transport convoy left Tsarskoye Selo, heading toward the fortress city of Königsberg, the Catherine Palace was left with only bare, cold brick walls. The golden light of 6 tons of amber was extinguished, replaced by the darkness of sealed wooden crates. From that moment on, the amber room officially entered the journey of a ghost. It was no longer a wonder for the world to admire, but had become a prisoner of war, a pawn in the power game of the Nazi elite. And Alfred Rode, then standing at Königsberg to welcome his child, had no idea he was beginning to write the darkest chapters of a curse that would last forever. In the winter of 1941, 27 giant wooden crates carrying the soul of the Russian Empire ended their weary journey at Königsberg, now Kaliningrad, the capital of the East Prussia region. This was not a random choice. Königsberg was the historical heart and spiritual cradle of the old Prussian state. For the Nazi elite, bringing the amber room here was not just an act of looting, but a ceremony to honor the return of a pure Aryan heritage. Under the frantic and obsessed supervision of Dr. Alfred Rode, the room was reinstalled on the 3rd floor of Wewelsburg Castle. However, the room here was much smaller than at the Catherine Palace in Russia. The amber panels, which were born to breathe in the vast space of the Tsar, were now cut, patched, and crammed into a narrow, suffocating space. The scene now bore a hauntingly distorted beauty. Candlelight reflecting off the gilded reliefs no longer created a sense of splendor and authority, but rather the suffocation of a cage. The amber room now resembled a rare captured beast, flaunting its fading beauty before SS officers in black cloaks clinking glasses in lavish parties. At this time, on the fronts, the tide of war was starting to turn. The crushing defeat at Stalingrad loomed like a ghost over Germany. Amidst a cracking empire, the display of the amber room at Königsberg became a cheap propaganda tool, a deceptive sedative meant to affirm the Third Reich's undying strength. But behind closed doors, another dark power struggle was silently unfolding. To understand the final fate of the amber room, we must enter the mind of one of the Third Reich's most cruel figures, Erich Gauleiter, regional party leader, or more accurately, Lord, of the East Prussia and Ukraine regions. If Alfred Rode was an intellectual scholar obsessed with art, Erich Koch embodied crude vulgarity, bottomless greed, and primal brutality. He ruled East Prussia as a separate kingdom, ignoring all orders from Berlin if they did not serve his personal interests. Koch did not see the amber room as cultural heritage or an architectural masterpiece. In his greed-clouded eyes, 6 tons of amber and pure gold were merely money, power, and most importantly the ultimate escape ticket when the Third Reich collapsed. The relationship between Koch and Dr. Rode quickly became a tense psychological war, a cat and mouse play with a deep noir feel. Imagine this scene: in the Golden Room, brilliant yet cold, Rode is using a soft silk brush to dust the angel reliefs. Suddenly, the oak door bursts open. Cook enters, the pungent smell of cigars and sour sweat overpowering the gentle scent of pine resin. He walks with his boots thumping hard on the stone floor, using his large, grimy fingers to roughly stroke the amber surface. Rode stands there, gritting his teeth in helplessness, his chest tightening. When the Soviet Red Army began to approach the East Prussian border in mid-1944, Rode begged, even screamed, for the Amber Room to be evacuated deep into southern Germany to protect it from bombs. But Cook, who was frantically ordering millions of East Prussian civilians to stay and fight to the last man, flatly refused. Cook held the room tight like a hostage. He knew that whoever held this treasure would have the power to bargain with the devil in the final hours. In late August 1944, the Royal Air Force, RAF, conducted 2 unprecedented destructive air raids on Königsberg. Thousands of tons of bombs, including napalm and white phosphorus bombs, rained down on the city. The night sky glowed a bloody red with fire. Phosphorus fire cannot be extinguished with water, it burns everything it touches, melting even stone and steel. Königsberg Castle took a direct hit. The proud wing of the Prussian state was engulfed in a sea of fire. Soaring towers collapsed, and stone corridors centuries old turned into giant incinerators. In a diary entry believed to belong to a firefighter present that night, he wrote, August 27, 1944. "The city is no longer a human realm, it is hell. When I looked toward Königsberg Castle, the flames rising were not the normal orange-red of burning wood. They emitted a strange, brilliant yellow light and were thick with a pungent, sweet smell of molten resin. Like an entire million-year-old primary forest being incinerated in a single moment." After the bombing, the Nazi government briefly announced, the Amber Room had been completely burned. But was that the truth? Or was it just a perfect play, a screen of fog created by Erich Koch and the SS to cover up the greatest dispersal in history? Amber is very flammable, true. But could 6 tons of amber packed in thick oak crates hidden deep in stone bunkers simply evaporate without leaving any metal traces or pools of molten resin? Not a single piece of relief. Not a mirror frame. Nothing at all. The truth, as always in the shadows of history, is much more complex and terrifying. Even before the fires at Königsberg had died down, rumors and intelligence reports began to filter through the front lines. Many witnesses who survived the bombing, including railway workers and warehouse guards, provided horrifying testimonies. They told of late 1944 and early 1945, as the Soviet Red Army tightened the siege around the city. In the biting cold of the Baltic winter, covered SS military transport convoys bearing the skull and crossbones emblem ran in sequence, leaving from the underground gates of Königsberg Castle. Where were they going? Some witnesses swore the convoy headed toward the Samland Peninsula, out to the seaport of Pillau where massive refugee ships were waiting. Others insisted the trucks turned south, joining the zigzagging rail network leading to abandoned salt mines hundreds of meters deep under the Thuringia region of Germany. There is a detail that makes this case profoundly dark, the terrifying silence. Erich Koch's SS force operated with a ruthless principle to protect secrets. Anyone involved in the loading, transporting, or driving for the secret convoys that night was immediately ordered to the harshest front lines on the Eastern Front. They were thrown into the meat grinder to ensure not a single mouth could open to confess. High-ranking officers directly in charge of the operation either suicided or disappeared under highly suspicious circumstances just before Allied forces arrived. Königsberg Castle was left as nothing but a grave of rubble. Erich Koch had fled on an icebreaker. Alfred Rode was left amid the ruins, clutching a secret he knew would end his life. The Amber Room, 6 tons of gold and million-year-old resin, was officially swallowed by the war machine, leaving a permanent void and a question that would haunt humanity for decades to come. The fog of the Third Reich has lifted, but a new ghost called the Amber Curse has only just awakened. April 1945. The fortress of Königsberg falls. The Soviet Red Army pours into the city not just as victors, but as debt collectors. A debt paid in blood, and a debt paid in gold. Following closely on the heels of the combat divisions was a notorious unit named Smerch, an abbreviation for Smerchspienum, death to spies. But in Königsberg, their mission was not merely to hunt down SS remnants. They carried a top-secret list from the Kremlin. At the top of that list, find the Amber Room. Professor Alexander Brusov, a leading art expert appointed to accompany the Red Army's treasure hunting commission, entered the ruins of Wewelsburg Castle while the wooden rafters were still smoldering. The scene resembled a cold inferno. In the deep basement of the castle, where 27 oak chests were once thought to be hidden, Brusov found only desolation. But then, amidst the charred remains of blackened furniture, they found a clue that made everyone shiver: 3 Florentine stone mosaics, the very mosaics once mounted on the walls of the Amber Room. They were scorched, cracked, and lying scattered on the ground. Only 3 pieces. There was no trace of 6 tons of fossilized resin having burned. There were no puddles of molten gold-leaf metal. If the room had truly been incinerated during the British bombing raids, why were only these 3 fragments left behind? Brusov immediately realized a chilling truth: this was a staged crime scene. Someone had intentionally thrown these 3 mosaics into the fire to deceive the Soviets, creating an illusion that the Eighth Wonder had turned to ash. As Smerch began interrogating the surviving witnesses, they fell into a labyrinth of conflicting testimonies. The cellar manager swore he saw the wooden crates burning. A railway officer insisted he had personally transferred them onto a train heading toward the Baltic Sea. Were they lying? Or were they merely blind pawns in a larger play orchestrated by the SS? The truth, at this point, resided in the mind of only one man. While Eric Cook, the greedy overlord, had long ago fled by ship, Dr. Alfred Rode, the museum director and man obsessed with the Amber Room, decided to stay in Königsberg. He and his wife lived precariously in a dark cellar amidst the ruined city, waiting for the Soviets to arrive. Why did a high-ranking officer and top Nazi expert not flee? Was it because he could not leave his child, or was he performing one last stand, a mission to misdirect the hunters? The confrontation between the Soviet Professor Brusov and the Nazi Dr. Rode in the cold interrogation rooms of Smerch remains one of the most classic psychological duels of the post-war era. Rode played the role of a senile old man, broken by the war. At times he wept, saying the room had burned; at other times, he secretly slipped Brusov scribbled, hand-drawn maps pointing to underground bunkers hidden deep in the forest. For months, the Red Army overturned every inch of soil according to Rode's directions, knocking down walls and draining ponds, but the result was always zero. Rode was stalling for time. By December 1945, Moscow's patience ran out. An order from the Internal Intelligence Agency, NKVD, the predecessor of the KGB, was issued. Alfred Rode and his wife were to be taken immediately to Moscow for interrogation by special means, a euphemism for the most brutal torture. But then, on the very night before the train was to depart, a mysterious phenomenon occurred. A Red Army medical officer reported that both Alfred Rode and his wife had suddenly died. The official cause: typhus. A coincidence so perfect it was suspicious. Too perfect for anything other than a liquidation. As soon as they drew their last breaths, the bodies of the Rhodes were immediately cremated without any independent autopsy. The mystery did not stop there. A few days later, when Professor Brusov returned to the hospital to find Rhodes' medical records, hoping to find a clue he might have hidden on his person, the entire medical file, the death certificate, and even the doctor who signed the papers had evaporated without a trace. Who ordered his permanent silence? SS werewolf remnants wanting to protect the treasure for the rise of the Fourth Reich? Or corrupt Red Army officers who had secretly found the room and wanted to keep it all for themselves, thus being forced to kill the only witness? The Amber Curse had tasted its first drops of peacetime blood. Rhodes' silence lasted for decades as the Cold War cast a dark shadow over all of Europe. Germany was divided. At this time, the Amber Room was not just money, it was a political weapon. The East German, GDR, government realized that if they found the symbol of power and returned it to the Soviet Union, they would permanently solidify their position against the West. East Germany's notorious secret police, the Stasi, under the leadership of Erich Mielke, established a special task force codenamed Operation Pushkin. The head of the operation was Major Paul Encke, a cold investigative officer obsessed with Third Reich records. Encke was granted supreme authority. The Stasi mobilized excavators, explosives, and thousands of personnel to dig through every mine, every ancient castle, and every abandoned bunker from Thuringia to the Ore Mountains. They compiled files tracking hundreds of former SS veterans hiding under civilian cover. But an invisible force always seemed to be one step ahead of the Stasi. Stasi records noted gruesome events. Whenever Encke's investigative team was about to break through an underground wall suspected of containing the treasure, they found that someone had been there the night before. Secret tunnels were professionally collapsed with explosives to block entry permanently. SS veteran witnesses who agreed to provide information one day were found the next day hanging in their garages or drowned in bathtubs with unusually high alcohol levels. The Stasi, the most feared intelligence organization in the world, was being made a fool of by a ghost. The frustration of Mielke and Encke proved one thing: though the Third Reich had fallen, the secret society protecting the Amber Room was still active, brutal, and effective in the shadows. If you think these murders only existed during wartime or behind the Iron Curtain, look at the bloodiest file of the 1980s. Target: George Stein. Stein was not a spy, not an officer, he was just a West German farmer passionate about history. But curiosity turned into a destructive obsession. For over 2 decades, Stein sold all his assets and sacrificed his marriage to travel across Europe, collecting tens of thousands of pages of secret documents about the Amber Room. He was the most brilliant independent treasure hunter. By August 1987, George Stein announced to the press that he had found the final piece of the puzzle. He asserted that the Amber Room had never been burned, nor was it in East Germany or Poland. It had been secretly funneled by Erich Koch into a secret Swiss bank account through Nazi asset stripping lines and was currently located in a secret vault in West Germany. Stein planned to hold a press conference to announce the exact location. He never got the chance. On August 20, 1987, Bavarian police received an anonymous call. In the middle of a dense pine forest, far from the highway, they found the body of George Stein. The scene was a masterpiece of psychological horror. Stein was stripped naked. Scattered around him were his research documents on the Amber Room, torn to shreds. But the most terrifying part was the cause of death. He wasn't shot, nor was he strangled. The killer had used a surgical scalpel to make several extremely precise and brutal incisions into his abdomen. The victim had been forced to remain conscious to endure the ultimate agony before bleeding to death. No wallet was missing. No fingerprints. No tire tracks leaving the scene. West German police quickly closed the case with the most absurd conclusion of all time: suicide due to depression. Can you imagine a man committing suicide by stripping naked in the forest and slicing his own stomach open with a scalpel? The death of George Stein was not a murder. It was a sentence. A bloody message sent to the world: do not touch the amber. The curse is real. Hundreds of deaths, billions of dollars in search costs, lives ruined. But what if all that blood was spilled over a grand lie from the very beginning? Returning to the years at the Catherine Palace before the war, the modern intelligence elite are whispering a conspiracy theory that forces all of history to be rewritten. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin was a man of extreme paranoia and suspicion. He knew Hitler would tear up the non-aggression pact. He knew the Germans would inevitably crave Russia's treasures. So, would Stalin leave the eighth wonder sitting there for the enemy to steal? The hypothesis suggests that as early as 1940, Stalin secretly ordered Russia's top artisans to create a fake amber room. They used synthetic resin, low-quality amber, and visual deception techniques. The real room was dismantled at night, crated, and moved deep into the Ural Mountains or hidden under underground bunkers in Moscow. What the Germans took in 1941, what Alfred Rode proudly brought back to Königsberg, was actually a sophisticated fake. If this is true, it explains why Rode went mad in his final days at Königsberg. Perhaps he discovered this humiliating truth. To hide his ignorance from Hitler, Rode was forced to stage the burned room play, throwing 3 real mosaic fragments, perhaps hidden beforehand, into the fire to legitimize the story. The Germans stole a fake. The Soviets hid the real one, but then those who knew were purged in Stalin's Great Purge, causing the true location to vanish forever. Or conversely, did the Germans steal the real one but create a fake to misdirect the Soviets? We are standing in a hall with countless mirrors reflecting lies. History has not only been distorted, it has been cast into a murky block of amber, trapping within it humanity's darkest secrets. And as excavators continue to drill into salt mines in Poland and Germany today, they do not know if they are searching for a treasure, or digging their own graves. If the amber room was not burned, and if it truly left Königsberg in the final days of the war, the most likely destination was the port of Pilau. There, in January 1945, one of the most horrific tragedies in maritime history occurred, the sinking of the Wilhelm Gustloff. The ship, once the pride of the Nazi vacation program, became the last lifeline for over 10,000 people fleeing the Red Army. But in the shadows of the cargo hold, there were witnesses who swore they saw SS forces escorting 27 large, carefully sealed oak chests, loaded onto the ship under the strict guard of machine gun-wielding soldiers. When the ship was torpedoed by a Soviet submarine, over 9,000 souls sank to the bottom of the cold Baltic Sea. And with them, perhaps, the eighth wonder of the world. For decades, the wreck of the Gustloff lay at a depth of 45 meters, considered a war grave forbidden from intrusion. However, intelligence reports suggest that Soviet Special Forces divers secretly accessed the wreck immediately after the war. What did modern divers discover when they sneaked into the wreck? Cargo holds torn open from the inside with explosives. Wooden chests smashed, but empty. Did the Russians recover the treasure and keep it quiet to avoid sharing it with the world? Or did those chests only contain bricks as a decoy while the real treasure was put on another ship? The Baltic Sea holds its secret with water pressure and eternal silence. Leaving the cold ocean, we enter the heart of Germany, the Thuringia region. This is where Hitler's underground banks were located. As Allied forces advanced, they were astonished to find the Merkur salt mine, holding tons of gold bars from the German Central Bank, Reichsbank, and thousands of priceless paintings from European museums. But there was another labyrinth named Jonistal. This was where thousands of concentration camp prisoners were worked to exhaustion to dig massive tunnels inside the mountains. Researchers believe Jonistal was designed to be Hitler's final headquarters if Berlin fell. According to declassified documents, the last armored trains from the east converged here. Modern searches using ground-penetrating radar, GPR, have discovered massive empty cavities filled with reinforced concrete up to 2 meters thick. Why would the Germans go to the trouble of sealing these bunkers if there was nothing inside? Treasure hunters believe the amber room may have been dismantled once more and hidden in these safe rooms deep underground, where radiation from natural salt ores interferes with all modern detection equipment. In 2016 and again in 2019, the world was shocked by discoveries at Mamerki, Poland, the former headquarters of the German Army High Command, OKH. Bartłomiej Plebańczyk, director of the museum there, released radar images showing a room-sized man-made object located beneath a massive concrete slab weighing dozens of tons that was not in the original fortress plans. However, every time a drill hits the boundary of the secret, disappointment follows. They find only empty rooms, broken ventilation pipes, or military waste. But Plabanchik does not give up. He believes the Germans built double bunker systems, a fake bunker filled with traps to misdirect, and a real bunker located even deeper beneath. At Mamerki, the fog of history is created not just by time, but by the ingenious deception techniques of Nazi military engineers. They did not just hide the treasure, they hid it in a labyrinth of illusions. We must return to the central figure, Erich Koch. After the war, Koch was captured in West Germany in 1949. For his crimes against humanity in Ukraine and East Prussia, where he was responsible for the deaths of over 1 million people, Koch should have been hanged immediately like his peers at Nuremberg. However, something strange happened. Koch was handed over to Poland. At his trial in 1959, he was sentenced to death. But that sentence was never carried out. Koch lived peacefully in a fairly comfortable prison in Barchowo for the next 27 years until dying of old age in 1986. Why? The answer lies in the amber card he held. Secret files from the Stasi and KGB reveal that throughout his imprisonment, Koch continuously engaged in back-channel negotiations. He dripped out small pieces of information about the treasure's location in exchange for delaying his death sentence. Koch knew that as long as the amber room remained unfound, he still had utility. Koch once challenged investigators, "I am the only one who knows where it is, and you will never find it unless I want you to." Did Koch use the treasure's location to bribe high-ranking Soviet and Polish officials? There is a theory that Koch actually pointed out the location to a group of secret agents, and the treasure was quietly recovered to be divvied up among the ghosts of the Cold War. The fact that Koch lived longer than any other war criminal is the most powerful testament to the Amber Room's power. It is not just gold, it is a bloody talisman. Now, Koch has taken the secret to his grave. Drills continue to roar in Poland, and divers continue to risk their lives in the Baltic. But perhaps the treasure is not there. It lies in a space sandwiched between truth and lies, where the last hunters will eventually realize, what they find is not gold, but a curse with no escape. In 1979, the Soviet government made a bold decision: if they could not find the lost treasure, they would recreate it with their own hands. A restoration journey lasting 24 long years began. Russian artisans faced an impossible challenge. They had no original drawings, only black and white photographs and a single surviving relief fragment. They had to relearn amber crafting techniques lost since the 18th century. Millions of dollars were spent, and tons of new amber were mined from the Baltic region to recreate every tiny detail. By 2003, in celebration of the 300th anniversary of the founding of St. Petersburg, the new Amber Room officially opened. It is magnificent, perfect, and more brilliant than ever. But for history seekers, this room always lacks one core element: it does not have the soul of history. It is a technical masterpiece, but it does not bear the scars of war, it does not have the warmth from the hands of Peter the Great, and it does not contain the dark secrets of Erich Koch or Alfred Rode. There is an ironic truth: if the Amber Room had never been stolen, perhaps it would just be one beautiful room among many in Europe's palaces. It is the sudden disappearance and decades of hopeless searching that have turned it into an immortal legend. Its absence creates a void that human imagination always craves to fill. Amber, in its essence, is fossilized resin. For millions of years, it has trapped within it the air bubbles of ancient eras, extinct insects, and the flow of time itself. The Amber Room is the same. It has trapped the ambitions of tyrants, the pain of curators, and the blood of those who knew too much. Perhaps, at this very moment, those 6 tons of gold and amber still lie silently in a damp cave, at the bottom of the deep Baltic Sea, or behind a thick reinforced concrete wall somewhere in Poland. It remains there, submerged in darkness, patiently waiting for the day sunlight once again touches those brilliant golden walls to retell the story of a mad era it witnessed. The truth about the Amber Room is a labyrinth with no exit, where every answer opens a new, bloodier question. Was it burned, swapped, or is it still waiting to be found? Which theory do you believe? A missing train, a shipwreck at the bottom of the sea, or a back-channel deal between power ghosts? Leave your comments below so we can discuss. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for the Noir Archive. We will return to help you decode the dark pages of history and the next buried secrets of humanity.